Web 3.0. So what does this really mean? Well, there's a lot of confusion as to what it actually is, what it hopes to be, and maybe more realistically, what it can be. So we're hoping, and at least the dream, is that we'll have decentralization of information, equal access to information, and there won't be a centralization either of business models or even political control over information and products. Well, reality is very different. And when we think about reality, we have to use some business analogies which say, we thought we'd have this decentralized world prior, right? We thought the internet would just allow equal access to everybody, governments couldn't interfere. Well, that didn't prove to be true. And businesses centralize. So we have all this decentralization of information, but it immediately centralizes into business models dominated by Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple, right? So we have that kind of centralization, and suddenly we're finding ourselves in an ecosystem because products and services focus, and those that are better served, dominate, right? Even if Google, for instance, is a little bit better than the next search engine, that's the search engine we use. There is no second place, essentially, although you could talk to the people at Bing, they might think otherwise. But the same thing when it comes to smartphones, when it comes to the ecosystems around the software, the apps, et cetera, there really is no substitute. So businesses naturally centralize, even if you have an initial distribution of information or even of products and services. So why is there a dream that this time it's different? Rarely is it ever different this time, but the hope is that the decentralization will be driven by the blockchain, right? So I say it's all in the block, because what we're saying is now there is a software tool that enables for information to be verified, distributed, accounted for, and therefore all products, and we say products and services really morph into intellectual property, that the ownership of that intellectual property can be verified, it can be transferred, there's compensation, and so business models will naturally be able to be decentralized. That's the hope. Well, the reality is, well, we have, services and infrastructures, and we have these tools, and we have these products, NFTs, which is, maybe it's a picture of a gorilla that somebody pays money for, but more importantly, it's intellectual property that can be owned and verified and transferred, and then proper compensation, right? It cannot be easily copied. They say it can't be copied at all, but we can challenge that. But more than anything, it's the manifestation of this idea that intellectual property can be compartmentalized and contained and owned and transferred with verification and then a tracing of those transfers and then proper compensation to those intellectual property owners, right? So that may be the case. The other, of course, big opportunity, they call it, DeFi or decentralized finance, right? So now on a platform, a digital platform, any investor or lender can access any company or entrepreneur, and there could be a matching of capital. There doesn't need to be a centralized clearing system, right? So raising money, whether it's through a stock market or whether it's through private capital, venture capital, or private equity, those structures that really enable these intermediaries can disappear, because now I can access those people directly via a digital platform. And there are some interesting digital platforms like Block One and others. And with NFTs, the digital platform at OpenSea, which enables for all of this decentralization. Well, the issue is, well, I've just named a couple companies. Do you really think they're not going to try to centralize around some form of business model where their platform is slightly better, their services offer something slightly more, and suddenly what was decentralized now becomes centralized again? Because after all, we talked about ecosystems, customers, profits, all that was driven by Google, Apple, et cetera, that I mentioned earlier. Now with OpenSea and with Block One and with other decentralized platforms, we're seeing a hope to keep people within their own sort of walled garden, as it were, right? Which was the great term that I think AOL tried. They failed miserably at that. But we're seeing that Google, Apple, Facebook, they figured that out. And it's not as if those models aren't well known by the people at these supposedly decentralized companies that are hoping to gather a great amount of customers on a global basis, but they're also hoping to keep them and attract them within their ecosystem to keep them there. So what happens now? We have this technology. We have NFTs, we have decentralized finance, we have blockchain technology. Do we have Web 3.0? And I'm saying, well, no, we don't. We're going to have maybe Web 2.5, where obviously NFTs exist, blockchain technology exists, these things happen, but there will be centralization. There will be certain companies that will dominate. That is the way business has always worked, right? 1915, I think there were about 1,000 automobile companies, and everyone thought, well, anyone who can make a car can sell a car. Well, not really, because by 1950 we only had 3 car companies in the United States, and the only new car company introduced was Tesla, introduced within the last 100 years. So this is not a market where there are easy barriers, right? Same thing here. There are significant barriers to entry in every business. Every business centralizes. I know antitrust regulators don't want to hear this, but there's no such thing as a distributed business model that's fragmented and global. It won't happen because people will find a way to provide a better service, better quality, better ecosystem for their customers, and those customers will naturally gravitate towards that. And as we've said, even the slightest difference, the slightest improvement will flock everyone there. So businesses naturally focus, they naturally centralize, they naturally consolidate. And so we will see some niches that will be decentralized. For sure, this technology enables that, and it enables the movement of intellectual property much more easily. But also, centralization is coming. There will be a handful of winners. Maybe OpenSea is one, maybe Block One is another. There may be some other examples. But what's going to happen is you're going to have a centralization, and Web 3.0 will not achieve its utopian dream. Let's just call it Web 2.5, where things are a little bit better. We will disintermediate some businesses. That's a good thing. But ultimately, ecosystems and centralization and basic business principles will prevail.